In 1633, the most powerful man in the Ottoman Empire made drinking a cup of coffee a crime you could be killed for. His name was Murad IV, and he ruled from Istanbul, the beating heart of an empire that stretched across 3 continents. He had decided that coffee and the coffee houses where people gathered to drink it were a threat to his throne. So he banned them, not with a fine, not with a warning, with death. The story goes that Murad was not content to let his soldiers enforce the law for him. At night, he would disguise himself as a common man, wrap himself in a plain cloak, and walk the streets of his own capital. And when he found someone sipping the forbidden drink, he would throw off the disguise and carry out the sentence himself on the spot. Whether every detail of that story is true or not, the ban itself was very real. And here is the part that should stop you. It did not work. The coffee houses kept reopening. People kept drinking. The most feared ruler of the age, a man who could raise armies and topple kingdoms, could not stamp out a cup of roasted beans and hot water. That tells you something. Coffee was never just a drink. By the time Murad tried to kill it, coffee had already begun to change the way human beings think, talk, argue, work, and gather. It would go on to fuel revolutions, build financial empires, enslave millions, and reshape entire continents. But coffee's story does not begin in Istanbul. It does not begin in a palace or a coffee house at all. It begins more than 1,000 years earlier on a cool green mountainside in the highlands of Africa, with a wild plant that nobody yet knew what to do with. This is the history of coffee. Our story starts in the highlands of Ethiopia, in a region once known as Kaffa. Some believe the very word coffee traces back to that name. Here, high above the heat of the lowlands, a small shrub grew wild in the forest shade. It produced clusters of little berries that turned from green to a deep, glossy red when they ripened. Inside each berry sat 2 small seeds. We would come to call them beans. For a very long time, nobody drank anything at all. The plant was just part of the forest. There is a famous legend about how that changed. It tells of a young goat herder named Kaldi who lived in these highlands long ago. One day, so the story goes, Kaldi noticed his goats behaving strangely. They had eaten the bright red berries from a certain shrub, and now they were full of energy, almost dancing, refusing to sleep through the night. Curious, Kaldi tried the berries himself and felt the same rush of wakefulness. He brought them to a local monastery, where the monks, we are told, first disapproved and threw the berries into a fire. But the smell of the roasting beans was so wonderful that they raked them out, ground them up, and dissolved them in water, creating the first cup of coffee. It is a charming tale. It is almost certainly not literally true. Kaldi may never have existed at all. But like many legends, it points at something real. The people of these highlands did discover the power of the coffee plant long before the rest of the world. They just did not use it the way we do now. Early on, coffee was not a drink. It was food. The Oromo people of the region are believed to have ground the ripe cherries together with animal fat, rolling the mixture into small round balls. Warriors and travelers carried these energy balls on long journeys, eating them for a burst of strength and alertness. The chewed leaves and cherries kept people awake and moving. Coffee entered human history not as a comfort, but as fuel. For the drink we would recognize today, we have to cross the Red Sea to the mountains of Yemen and jump forward to the 1400s. This is where the real story of coffee as a beverage begins. In Yemen, people took the beans, roasted them, ground them, and brewed them in hot water, creating a dark and bitter drink. They called it kahwa, and it found a home, at first, among a very particular group of people, the Sufis. The Sufis were Muslim mystics who held long religious ceremonies late into the night, chanting and praying for hours. Staying awake was a struggle. Coffee solved it. That dark, bitter cup let the worshippers push through exhaustion and keep their focus through the small hours of the morning. Word spread from monastery to monastery. Coffee became the drink of devotion, prized precisely because it did what sleep could not allow. It kept the mind sharp and burning while the body wanted to shut down. From the port city of Mocha on the coast of Yemen, coffee began to travel, and that single port would give its name to a style of coffee that people still order today. For a long time, Yemen guarded its treasure jealously. To keep control of the trade, the beans were only allowed to leave the country boiled or roasted so that they could not be planted and grown anywhere else. Coffee was a secret worth protecting, but secrets do not stay secret forever. As coffee spread out of Yemen and across the Muslim world, something new appeared alongside it. A place, a building, an institution that would prove far more powerful than the drink itself, the coffee house. In cities like Mecca, Cairo, and Damascus, coffee houses opened their doors and people poured in. These were not quiet places. Men gathered to drink coffee, yes, but also to talk, to play games of chess and backgammon, to listen to music and poetry, to trade news and gossip, to argue about politics and religion. For the first time, there was a public space, open to ordinary people, where you could sit for hours with a cheap cup in your hand and simply exchange ideas. And that is exactly what frightened the people in charge. In 1511, in the holy city of Mecca, a governor named Kaya Beg looked at these lively, buzzing coffee houses and saw danger. He worried they were breeding criticism of his rule. So he banned coffee, condemning it as sinful and dangerous. It was one of the first coffee bans in history, and it set a pattern that would repeat for centuries. Rulers again and again would look at a room full of caffeinated people talking freely, and they would feel the ground shift under their feet. The ban in Mecca did not last. Higher authorities overturned it, and coffee flowed again. But the lesson was clear. Wherever coffee went, coffee houses followed, and wherever coffee houses opened, power grew nervous. This brings us back to where we started, to the Ottoman Empire and to Istanbul, where the first great coffee houses of the city opened in the 1500s and quickly became known as something remarkable. People called them schools of the wise. You could walk in knowing nothing and walk out having heard the sharpest minds in the city debate the issues of the day. For rulers like Murad IV, that was intolerable. He knew that the soldiers who had murdered members of his own family had gathered and plotted in coffee houses. He knew that a room full of alert, talking, unhappy men was where rebellions were born. So he brought down the death penalty we opened this story with. His successors kept the pressure on for years. And still, coffee survived, because by then the drink had slipped beyond the reach of any single ruler. There is a legend about how coffee finally broke free of Arabia's control. It tells of a man named Baba Budan, a pilgrim who traveled to Mecca and discovered coffee there. On his way home to India, the story goes, he strapped 7 precious coffee beans to his belly, smuggling them out of Arabia against the law. 7. Because in his faith it was a holy number. He planted them in the hills of southern India, and from those few smuggled seeds, an entire new coffee region was born. True or not, the meaning of the story is real. The monopoly was ending. Coffee was about to go global, and the next people to get their hands on it would turn it from a sacred drink into one of the most profitable and most brutal industries the world had ever seen. Coffee reached Europe in the 1600s, and at first, Europe did not know what to make of it. This dark, bitter, foreign drink arrived through the trading city of Venice, and it made people suspicious. Some Christians called it the bitter invention of Satan, a Muslim drink that had no place in a Christian world. There is a story that the controversy reached all the way to the Pope. According to the tale, advisors urged Pope Clement VIII to condemn coffee as the devil's drink. But before ruling, the Pope asked to taste it. And when he did, he found it so delicious that, the story goes, he joked that it would be a sin to let only unbelievers enjoy something this good. So he blessed it instead. Whether it truly happened, we cannot say. But coffee won Europe over all the same. And when it arrived, it brought its most powerful invention with it, the coffee house. In 1652, London's first coffee house opened its doors. Within a few short decades, there were thousands of them across the city, and they transformed English life. For the price of a single penny, the cost of 1 cup of coffee, Any man could walk in, sit down, and join the conversation. People began to call them penny universities, because an afternoon spent listening in a coffee house could teach you more than a week of anything else. Now here is the part of coffee's story that most people never learn. Those noisy London coffee houses did not just serve drinks, they gave birth to institutions that still run the modern world. Different coffee houses attracted different crowds. Scientists gathered in some, and out of those conversations grew ideas that shaped the Royal Society, one of the oldest scientific institutions on Earth. Writers and poets filled others, traders and merchants had their own, and one coffee house in particular, run by a man named Edward Lloyd, became the favorite of sailors, ship owners, and merchants who needed to insure their voyages against disaster at sea. They met there so often and did so much business over coffee that the coffee house itself slowly turned into something else. That coffee house became Lloyd's of London, which grew into one of the most important insurance markets on the planet, still operating today, centuries later. Think about that. The modern insurance industry, the system that protects ships, homes, businesses, and lives across the entire world, grew out of gossip and deals made over cups of coffee in a 17th century coffee house. Stock exchanges, newspapers, scientific societies, and auction houses all trace roots back to these caffeinated rooms. This is the quiet secret of coffee. It did not just wake people up, it gave them a place to gather while they were awake, and out of that gathering came the modern world. Historians even connect coffee houses to the Enlightenment itself, that great explosion of reason and new ideas across Europe. It is no accident that a culture obsessed with clear thinking fell in love with a drink that sharpens the mind. Rulers noticed, of course. In 1675, the King of England, Charles II, tried to shut down every coffee house in the land, calling them places where troublemakers spread rumors against his government. It sounds familiar by now, but the public backlash was so fierce that he was forced to back down within days. In Europe, unlike in the Ottoman Empire, coffee had already won. But while Europe was busy talking and drinking, its powers were also busy doing something far darker with coffee. They were about to plant it across the world, and they were about to force millions of human beings to grow it in chains. For as long as coffee had existed, it had been controlled by Arabia. But the European trading empires wanted their own supply, and they were willing to steal for it. In the late 1600s, the Dutch managed to smuggle live coffee plants out and carried them across the ocean to their colonies in the East Indies, to an island we now call Java. The plants thrived. Soon, so much coffee poured out of that one island that the word Java became a nickname for coffee itself, a nickname still used today. From there, the race was on. Every European empire wanted coffee colonies of its own. There is a famous story about a French naval officer named Gabriel de Clieu, who was determined to carry a single coffee seedling from Europe across the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean. The voyage was brutal. The ship was becalmed, water ran low, and everyone aboard was rationed to almost nothing. Yet de Clieu, the story goes, shared his own precious drinking water with the tiny coffee plant, day after day, to keep it alive. When he finally reached the island of Martinique, he planted it, and from that one surviving seedling, according to legend, millions of coffee trees would eventually spread across the Caribbean and beyond. It is a beautiful story of devotion, but we cannot let it hide the truth of what came next, because the coffee that spread across the Caribbean and then across Central and South America was not grown by devoted gardeners lovingly watering seedlings. It was grown on plantations, and those plantations ran on slavery. To feed Europe's endless thirst, coffee joined sugar as a crop of the transatlantic slave trade. Millions of enslaved Africans were shipped across the ocean and forced to work and die in the fields, planting, tending, and harvesting coffee under the whip, in colonies from the Caribbean to Brazil. The gentle morning ritual that Europeans enjoyed in their elegant coffee houses was built, cup by cup, on a foundation of unimaginable human suffering an ocean away. This is the part of coffee's history that its warm, cozy image works hard to make us forget. One country would come to tower over all the others. Brazil. With vast land and, tragically, a vast enslaved workforce, Brazil turned coffee into an industrial-scale crop in the 1800s and became the largest coffee producer on Earth, a position it still holds today. At its peak, Brazil grew such an enormous share of the world's coffee that it could shake the entire global market on its own. But for all its power, coffee carried a hidden weakness, and in the 1860s, that weakness nearly destroyed it. On the island of Ceylon, which we now call Sri Lanka, the British had built one of the largest coffee industries on Earth. Vast stretches of rainforest had been cleared and planted, and by 1870, the island was shipping out around 100 million pounds of coffee every year. Then came the enemy. A tiny fungus appeared on the coffee leaves, leaving orange spots that spread with terrifying speed. It was called coffee leaf rust, and the desperate planters gave it a grim nickname, Devastating Emily. There was no cure. The rust swept from estate to estate, withering the plants and killing the harvest. Within 20 years, Ceylon's mighty coffee industry had all but collapsed. Exports crashed from 100 million pounds to just a few million. 90% of the coffee land was abandoned. Faced with total ruin, the planters made a desperate gamble. They tore out their dying coffee and planted something else in its place, tea. And it worked so well that the island became one of the most famous tea producers in the entire world, a title it still holds today. So the next time you see a box of Ceylon tea on a shop shelf, remember this: it exists only because a fungus destroyed the coffee that came before it. An entire national industry born from the ashes of another. Coffee was now more than a drink or a gathering place. It was a global commodity, an engine of empires, and a force that could make and break economies. And it was also, once again, a fuel for revolution. Just as it had worried the sultans of Istanbul, coffee helped power the great uprisings of the modern age. In France, in the 1700s, the cafes of Paris became the meeting grounds of radicals and thinkers who dreamed of overthrowing the king. The story goes that in July of 1789, a young man named Camille Desmoulins leapt onto a table outside a Paris cafe and gave a fiery speech that helped spark the crowds toward the storming of the Bastille, the event that ignited the French Revolution. The cafe, that direct descendant of the Arabian coffeehouse, had become a launchpad for the modern world. Across the ocean, coffee became something else entirely. It became patriotic. When American colonists grew furious at British taxes on tea, they staged the famous Boston Tea Party, dumping British tea into the harbor. After that, drinking tea could feel like an act of loyalty to a hated king. So Americans turned, deliberately, to coffee instead. Choosing coffee over tea became a small act of rebellion, a way of declaring independence in your own kitchen. It helped set the United States on its path to becoming one of the greatest coffee-drinking nations the world has ever seen. By the 1800s and 1900s, coffee was woven into the fabric of daily life. The Industrial Revolution filled cities with workers who needed to stay alert through long, grinding shifts, and coffee was there to keep them going. New inventions made it faster and easier than ever. Instant coffee arrived, letting a soldier or a worker make a hot cup in seconds from a spoonful of powder. Coffee traveled with armies through the great wars of the 20th century, warming and waking millions of troops. But coffee's global power came with a violent instability, and nothing revealed it more starkly than what happened in Brazil during the Great Depression. By the 1920s, Brazil had planted so much coffee that it was producing far more than the world could possibly drink. Then, in 1929, the American stock market crashed and demand for coffee collapsed almost overnight. The price of a bag of Brazilian coffee fell by around 90% in a matter of months. Warehouses overflowed with beans that nobody would buy. So the Brazilian government made a shocking decision. If the world would not buy the coffee, they would destroy it. Between 1931 and 1944, Brazil deliberately burned around 78 million bags of coffee. That is more than 10 billion pounds, enough to supply the entire country for over 3 years, set on fire on purpose just to keep prices from collapsing. In one single year, 1937, Brazil burned more coffee than the whole world would drink. Mountains of beans were shoveled into furnaces and dumped into the sea at the port of Santos. A foreign journalist flying overhead in those years saw the smoke rising and could scarcely believe his eyes. It is one of the most haunting images in the entire history of food. A country burning a mountain of one of the most desired products on earth, while in that same depression, millions of people went hungry. That is the brutal logic of a global commodity. Coffee had become so vast and so tangled in the machinery of the world economy that it could be worth more as smoke than as a drink. And then, in the late 20th century, coffee transformed one more time. It became an experience, a lifestyle, and a global brand. The rise of the modern coffee chain turned the humble cup into a daily luxury, a name written on a paper cup, a familiar smell on every high street from Tokyo to New York. The coffee house, that ancient invention, came full circle, becoming once again a place where people gather to talk, to work, and to sit for hours with a cup in their hand. Which brings us, at last, to now, to today, to your morning. Today, human beings drink around 2 billion cups of coffee every single day. 2 billion. It is one of the most consumed beverages on the entire planet. Behind those 2 billion cups stands a vast and often invisible world. An estimated 25 million families around the globe depend on growing coffee to survive. Many of them small farmers in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, working the same highlands and hillsides their ancestors did. And here is the uncomfortable truth hiding inside your comfortable morning cup. The people who grow the coffee are very often the ones who see the least of the money. A farmer may earn just a few cents from a crop that will be sold for several dollars a cup on the other side of the world. The same imbalance that began in the age of empires and slavery still casts a long shadow over the industry today. There is a new threat, too. The most prized type of coffee, called Arabica, is delicate. It needs specific temperatures and cool mountain air to thrive. As the world's climate warms, the land where that coffee can grow is shrinking. Scientists warn that a large share of today's coffee-growing regions could become unsuitable in the coming decades. The drink that has survived bans, empires, and revolutions now faces a challenge that even a sultan's sword could not match. So think back for a moment on the whole journey. A wild shrub on a misty Ethiopian mountainside, ignored for thousands of years. A bitter drink that kept Yemeni mystics awake through the night. A gathering place so powerful that emperors and kings tried to ban it with death and failed. An industry that helped build modern finance and science, and at the same time helped drive the machinery of slavery. A drink that fueled the French Revolution and became a symbol of American independence. And finally, 2 billion cups a day, sitting in offices, kitchens, and cafes all over the world. It is one of the most extraordinary stories any single plant has ever written across human history. And the strangest part of all is how ordinary it feels now. The drink that an emperor once tried to behead people for is now the most unremarkable thing in the world. It is waiting for you tomorrow morning, in a mug on your counter, in a cup on your way to work, warm and bitter and quietly powerful, exactly as it has been for 600 years. You will probably drink it without a second thought, but now you know what you are really holding. If this story surprised you, subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden histories behind the everyday things all around you. Drop a like if you learned something new, and leave a comment telling me which part of Coffee's story surprised you the most. There is a lot more history waiting to be poured.